I haven't bought bug spray in 30 years. A $10 can protect your skin. It does nothing for the 6 feet of air between your door and the porch chair. My grandmother had an answer for that gap. 9 plants, one at every door and window. Mosquitoes, flies, wasps, ants. None got past her. I still keep all 9. I crush a handful of catnip between my palms before I sit down on the porch. The smell comes up sharp, green, and slightly medicinal, somewhere between mint and turned earth. The boards hold the day's heat through the sole of my sock. Late July in Hawkins County, just before dusk, and the hollow goes quiet as the light drops. The mosquitoes are already lifting out of the tall grass. I have already paid the toll. 1 basil plant, $3 at any nursery. Sitting in a pot by the door, asking nothing of you. Off has been the answer most people reach for instead. The same can for nearly 70 years now. My grandmother's answer was already growing in that clay pot by the door, brushed by every hand that passed through. What those plants are actually doing to an insect, why it turns around and leaves, isn't what the spray companies ever explained. Once you understand what's happening, where to put them makes perfect sense. The same compounds those sprays are trying to deliver to your skin are quietly doing what they have always done at the door. Processing destroys the thing you are trying to obtain. The living plant doesn't need processing. It produces volatiles continuously. Every time a sleeve catches a leaf in passing, every time a breeze moves through the window screen. She didn't hang it there because it looked nice. She hung it there because she knew what was on the other side of that screen door in July. The common explanation is that insects hate the smell. That isn't precise enough to be useful. What these plants do is more specific than that. A fly navigating toward your kitchen follows a thread of odor. Carbon dioxide, the warmth of skin, trace compounds your body puts off without your knowing it. The insect rides that thread like a current. It doesn't decide where to go. It follows a gradient. When you place a plant with strong, volatile compounds at the entry point, you collapse that gradient. The insect's smell organs are picking up so many signals at once that the thread it was following disappears into noise. It can't find the kitchen anymore. It can't find you. That's the trick. Scrambling the navigation signal rather than simply offending the insect. And it's what separates a well-placed herb bundle from a decorative wreath. Your grandmother's tansy at the window was a navigation jammer. That is the precise word for what it was. One of the 9 plants on this list is completely safe as a leaf at your window and dangerous enough to kill someone in a different form. I'll tell you exactly which one and exactly where safe use ends and danger begins before we're done. But to understand why that boundary exists, you have to understand what these plants are actually doing to an insect's nervous system. Because the same compound that confuses a mosquito is the reason one of these plants comes with a warning. One plant catches one channel of that navigation. Several plants together catch several channels at once. Basil carries a compound called linalool, which disrupts one set of the insect's smell receptors. Tansy carries thujone, which works on an entirely different part of the insect's nervous system, blocking signals that normally keep its muscles coordinated. Catnip carries nepetalactone. In lab testing, it outperforms the active ingredient in off, not by a little. Outperforms it for keeping insects out of a space entirely, not just off skin. Off protects the body it is sprayed on. Catnip at the window protects the room. 2 different entry points into the same thing, the insect's ability to navigate. That has been tested. 3 of these compounds working together at the entry point stop mosquitoes from finding their way through at more than twice the rate of any single compound working alone. She used them together because together they worked better. That observation didn't require a laboratory. Appalachian grandmothers hung tansy bunches at their windows. Families in the Cameroonian highlands kept basil plants at the corners of rooms where people slept to stop mosquitoes from reaching the bed. European households in the medieval period strewed tansy on floors and hung bundles at door frames to keep flies off stored meat. None of them were in correspondence. A woman in Hawkins County, a family in the Cameroonian highlands, a household somewhere across the Atlantic in a stone-floored kitchen. None of them knew what the others were doing. They were each watching what the insects did, adjusting what they placed and where until it worked. 3 traditions, no shared notes, the same practice. Aromatic plants placed exactly where the insects must pass. This was uninterrupted generational observation, conducted over centuries, in conditions that required the plant to actually work. The science now has a name for it, the confusant hypothesis. They called it good sense. How many cans of spray have you bought this year for a problem your grandmother solved with a $3 plant? Most people who try this make one mistake that wipes out the whole thing, and I'll show you exactly what it is before this is over. These plants don't need a solvent. There is no tea to brew, no oil to press. Stay with me, because this is the part most people get wrong. The volatile compounds that do the work, linalool, nepetalactone, thujone, menthol, are released directly into the air by the living leaf. Crushing releases them immediately. Airflow over intact leaves releases them slowly and continuously. A sleeve catching a branch in the doorway releases a burst. No extraction is needed. The plant is the preparation. Temperature is the only thing that works against you here. Direct sun on a dried bundle accelerates the loss of those volatiles faster than you gain the benefit. Keep fresh bundles in shade or indirect light. A window with a screen that lets air through is better than a south-facing sill that bakes in afternoon sun. The leaves hold the compounds. Heat drives them off faster than insects can be confused by them. For placement, 1 living basil plant per entry point. Each door, each window you open regularly. Tansy bunches of 4 to 6 stems, hung at the window frame at roughly nose height where the air comes through first. Pennyroyal tucked at sill level, low, where the airflow passes through before rising into the room. You need at least 1 aromatic plant at each room threshold for the confusant effect to cover the entry zone. 1 plant in the middle of the kitchen does less than 1 plant at the kitchen door. That is the placement logic. That is what got lost when people stopped keeping them. Most of what I share on here, my grandmother never wrote down. She just knew. Every week I put up a new one. Another plant, another preparation, another thing that almost did not make it through. If that matters to you, stick around. I would love to have you. A fresh bundle works for 1 to 2 weeks before it needs replacing. The test is simple. Walk toward it and take a breath at arm's length. If you smell it on approach, an insect can be confused by it. If you don't smell it, neither can the fly. Living potted plants produce volatiles continuously and don't need replacing on a schedule. Brushing the leaves in passing keeps the release going. That's not an accident of design. That is the point. The mistake I see now is people buying essential oil diffusers made from these plants and expecting the same result. A diffuser puts out a single concentrated compound, usually the most commercially appealing one, at a concentration far below what it actually takes to confuse the insect. That confusion needs the full volatile profile of the whole plant, including the minor compounds that never make it into a commercial isolate, because they are not the ones that sell. You can't reconstruct what the whole plant does by selecting the most fragrant piece of it. Same rule as the spray can. Process it, and you lose the thing that made it work. Catnip at the window is perhaps the most underused of all of them in a modern garden. The nepetalactone it releases is the compound confirmed to outperform standard insect repellent for spatial repellency, keeping insects from entering a space. The Appalachian placement is exactly right for how it works. This next one is the one I told you about earlier. Pennyroyal, and I mean American pennyroyal, Hedioma pelagoides, the one native to this region from Nova Scotia down through these mountains and into Georgia, carried more than one kind of knowledge. Gertrude Mull, whose name the Foxfire collectors wrote down, kept pennyroyal. Her generation understood that plant in full, what it did in the medicine chest and what it did at the window in July. Not everything about what she knew got written down. The bunches at the sill were different. That use was real, and it was documented. Here I have to stop and tell you something plainly. Pennyroyal, the plant, dried or fresh leaves placed at a window or doorway, is the use this episode covers. Pennyroyal essential oil is a different matter entirely. That oil has caused liver failure. It has caused miscarriages. It has killed people. Never apply it to skin. Never ingest it. Never use it around pregnant women or pets. What your grandmother kept at the window was the leaf. That is the boundary. I'm not softening that. Rue is the one you handle with gloves. It has its own caution. The plant contains compounds that become reactive in sunlight. Handle rue, then step into the sun, and your skin can burn at the contact points. Wear gloves when you handle it, or wash your hands before going outside. The deterrent function is real. The handling risk is also real. Both things are true at the same time. Tansy does double duty. At the window, it discourages flies. At the entry sill, where the ants are looking for the path to the kitchen, it disrupts the signal they use to navigate. Flies and ants both respond to thujone, but they aren't doing the same thing when they encounter it. The fly loses its bearing in the air. The ant loses the trail on the ground. That same medieval habit of hanging tansy at door frames worked on the flies drawn to stored meat, same as it works on the ones drawn to your kitchen. That tradition crossed the Atlantic with the settlers who came into these mountains and kept going because the plant kept working. One caution: tansy isn't safe to eat. The traditional use is always external: hanging, tucking, placing. That is the use in this episode. Spearmint or peppermint at an ant-prone threshold works on a different principle from the rest of these plants. Ants don't navigate by sight. They navigate by scent, specifically by a chemical trail laid down by the first ant that found the food. Every ant that follows is following that trail. Menthol breaks that trail at the threshold. The ant coming behind loses the line and stops. Without the trail, the column does not form. One plant at the kitchen door interrupts the only communication system those ants have. Wormwood is for the wasps, and my grandmother had strong feelings about it. A sprig at a porch post handles them. Wormwood and tansy carry the same compound, thujone, and it affects wasp nerve coordination the same way it affects a fly's. Wasps navigate by scent. Tucked at the post nearest where people sit in the evening, it puts that compound between the wasp and whatever drew it there. My grandmother said wormwood was too bitter for anything that meant to stay. She wasn't wrong about that. Lemongrass near an outdoor seating area carries citral, the compound that gives it that sharp lemon edge when you brush against it. Families in climates warmer than these mountains have kept it at the perimeter of outdoor living spaces for the same reason. Flying insects cannot navigate cleanly through it. Lemongrass is not native to Appalachia. It came into southern mountain kitchen gardens from elsewhere and earned its place by doing what it does. Where it grows near, where you sit, wasp pressure drops. That is the test. If it works, it stays. Lavender beside the door carries linalool, the same compound as basil. Different plant, same trick. It scrambles the navigation signal flies and moths use to find their way through an entry point. Lavender may be the most familiar plant on this list to a modern household and the least understood for this purpose. People grow it because it's beautiful. That's a fine reason. What they do not usually know is that dooryard and cottage garden planting traditions across Europe and Appalachia put it at entry points for 3 centuries before anyone called it decoration. The beauty was incidental. The placement was deliberate. The sign that the arrangement is working. Fly presence at treated windows drops noticeably within 3 to 5 days. Ants stop crossing treated thresholds. The smell reaches you at arm's length on approach. If it reaches you, it's working. If it's faded past that range, replace it. Before I tell you what these plants won't do, here's why this got lost in just 1 generation. I want to be clear about what this does and what it doesn't do. This arrangement, plants at doors and windows, placed where the insects must pass, reduces the pressure of mosquitoes, flies, ants, and wasps entering your living space. That is what it does. It doesn't eliminate a colony of ants already established inside your walls. It doesn't dissolve a wasp nest already built under the eave. It doesn't clear a fly population already breeding indoors. Those situations need a different intervention, and I won't tell you otherwise. The herbs at the entry point only prevent what hasn't gotten in yet. I mean that. The light is gone from the hollow now. The jar on the porch rail has 4 stems of basil in it, cut this morning. There is a pot of catnip beside the door, and the spearmint is coming up thick along the bottom step. I haven't sprayed anything. My mother kept these plants because her mother kept them. They worked. There was no reason to stop. That knowledge almost disappeared in a single generation. Not because it failed, but because it stopped being passed down at the same time a can of spray became cheap and available. What was lost wasn't just the plants. It was knowing why they went exactly there. At the entry, at nose height, at the sill, not somewhere else. What did your grandmother keep by the door? If you know, tell me in the comments. I want to know what she kept and where she kept it.